Hey, friends, welcome back to the Broken to Beloved podcast. This is episode 27. I hope to provide practical resources through compassionate conversations to grow in trauma awareness, set up safeguarding practices to prevent or avoid future trauma, and move toward healing and wholeness. I'm your host, Brian Lee, and I'm so glad you're here. We're in a short series highlighting our values, and if you'd like to hear other ones, you can go back to episode 20 to hear about curiosity over certainty, episode 24 on goodness over wickedness, or having a Genesis 1 versus Genesis 3 theology, and you can hear episode 25 on people over position. Today, we're wrapping up this value series with a little bit of a hodgepodge. I will confess I am not entirely prepared, and I'm going to be doing this as we go on the fly. And you know what? That's okay. There are a couple of other values I've been wanting to articulate and just haven't been quite sure how to do it. So this is me processing in real time, which I'm not often very good at doing. But there are a couple of different ideas that I've been bouncing around and playing with and just trying to articulate a little more clearly for myself so I can articulate it for you. And so in the spirit of doing things imperfectly, but at least having them done, some of those ideas include connection over isolation, wholeness over brokenness, and agency over prescription. I don't know that any of these are final. I've been saying since the beginning that none of this is final language. It's all a work in progress. And today you kind of get the ultimate example of that. For connection over isolation, it's this idea that we believe and value functioning as an integrated body of Christ by moving towards others, that we want to extend relationships. We want to call people in and not call them out. We want to show them dignity and respect and tell them that they belong here. We recognize that God created us to be in relationship with Him and with each other, and that our faith, while intensely personal, was never meant to be lived out alone. Another work in progress value is the idea of wholeness over brokenness. Obviously, our name is Broken to Beloved, and a lot of that comes out of my over-identifying and misidentifying as broken for so many years. And we really believe in and value the idea of living as whole people. That while we want to invite everyone to bring all their broken pieces to the table, it's not how we're meant to live. And it's certainly not who we are. It can be something that happened to us, but it's not your identity. The root word for integrity evolves from the Latin integer, which means whole or complete. It's often defined as an undivided or unbroken completeness, or a state of being complete or whole. I love this quote that Lori Wilbert shares in her book, The Understory, that she once heard Duke theology professor Norman Wiersbe say that our work as Christians is to liberate others into wholeness. And I have never forgotten that. And I feel like that captures and encapsulates so much of the work that we're trying to do here, is to liberate people into wholeness, to free them from this false identity that we have of being broken or victims or survivors or whatever those things. And while those may be true, they are not ultimately who we are. And in order to live as whole people, we must integrate our full selves and with each other. If we truly are members of the body of Christ, then not one of us can or should be left out or excluded. Not one of us is more or less important than the others. We believe that we are fully embodied and fully finite and limited beings, called and created to fit together in community. And so to live with integrity, to live in wholeness, is to show up as your whole self. Too often, I think many of us feel the need to hide or suppress some part of us in a different environment, whether by choice or perception, maybe explicit instructions. We put away some part of ourselves. We code switch depending on the room that we're in, or we choose not to speak up. We self-censor or silence ourselves, thinking or feeling or believing that our voice is not truly welcome. So we want to be a people who invite and encourage other people to show up as their whole and full self, bringing every part of them and living in recognition and awareness of all of our light and shadows, knowing that we will be seen, soothed, safe, and secure. And finally, the last value that I want to share that I'm, again, working on is the idea of agency over prescription. It's this idea that we recognize that abuse and trauma so often strip us of our voice and our choice. And we want to be a community that works to restore and reclaim a sense of agency, again, to offer dignity and worth, to honor your voices and your stories, and to encourage the empowerment of each individual to make those choices for themselves. Here's a quote from Wade Mullen in Something's Not Right. More than anything, abuse takes away your agency, your ability to choose for yourself. Finding that agency is an important step toward freedom and recovery. And that's what we want to help you to do. J.S. Park says it this way in The Voices We Carry. Not everyone needs somebody to speak for them, but they instead need the right tools to speak on their own. And so that's why you'll hear me want and try to define and clarify things so often, is because we want to provide really clear and good language and handles for concepts that we've always felt but didn't know how to put into words. And I think when we are able to tell our stories, when we are able to own and name what has happened to us, then we begin to reclaim some of that agency and be able to step forward in making choices for ourselves, in drawing boundaries for ourselves, in doing things that are of our own volition and not because we thought we should or not because someone told us we needed to. It's why I try really hard, certainly not perfect, to not prescribe things, to not say, hey, this is how you should do things. This is how you ought to do things. This is the right way to do it. I often try to use the language of this is what has worked for me. Our friend and therapist, Aundi Kolber, often tags things by saying, take what you need. That it's not meant to be prescriptive. It's not meant to be this is going to work for everyone or this is the only way to heal. It's a take what you need kind of approach. And if you find it helpful, if it works for you, then I'm grateful. If not, that's okay. Because again, you get to make your own choice. I often quote Mark Twain when I'm doing this work, and the idea that a cat that sits on a hot stove lid won't sit on a hot stove lid again. But it probably won't sit on a cold stove lid either. And it's this idea that when we make our choices, when we choose to stay or walk away or whatever it is, I get it. I was having a conversation with another friend this morning and preparing for the summit and doing a recording that when atheists or agnostics or whoever it is share these ideas that they choose not to believe in God or not to attend church or not to trust pastors or whatever it is, I say, I get it. Because guess what? Christians can be real turds sometimes, is the way that she put it. And I laughed because it's true. So we're not here to tell you how to do things. We're not here to tell you, quote, the right way to do something. We're here to offer resources and hope that you find them helpful and to allow you to make the choice for yourself. So I'm going to wrap up and share all of our values one more time, including the last few works in progress. The idea of curiosity over certainty, that we want to approach life with faith with open hands, hearts, and minds by asking questions, actively listening, and thinking critically. The idea of goodness over wickedness. And I got an interesting comment from someone who's listening who saw that title and thought, well, of course we should, but not realizing it has to do with our identity and view of ourselves and of other people, that we want to choose a view of humanity rooted in Genesis 1 at creation, that we are declared as very good, and reject a worm theology that declares wretchedness and depravity rooted in Genesis 3 after the fall. We value people over position. We want to acknowledge the divine dignity of every human being over any dogma or doctrine by learning to see, hear, and know our neighbors. And then our works in progress, connection over isolation, wholeness over brokenness, and agency over prescription. I hope that helps you to understand where we're coming from and how we're trying to operate as an organization. Again, in year 1 of being in existence, we've done a lot of things this year that I'm really proud of, and I know that we have a long way to go. And so we want these to be our guiding principles as we go forward, continue to make decisions, develop programs, provide resources, and that's the kind of work that we want to do. It's how we want to view ourselves. It's how we want to view you, our listeners, our community, the world at large. And finally, a few short announcements to wrap up. Giving Tuesday was just a week ago. We set a goal to raise $10,000 by the end of the year. And again, with full transparency, a large percentage of that, I think 65 to 70%, goes to my payroll. just to be clear. And the rest goes to run our programs, to pay for things like website hosting and platforms that we use for recording things and equipment. But honestly, I needed to survive and to get us through the end of the year, to keep the roof over our heads and food on the table. And you have helped us to raise over $7,500. And I am incredibly grateful to every person who has donated and given. We are still hoping to raise about $2,500 by the end of the year. Truly, every dollar helps. If you go to the website, brokentobeloved.org, you can just click on the button right at the top if you'd like to give. We've received gifts between $5 all the way up to $1,000 or more. And we recognize the sacrifice that each of those gifts represents. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Our annual report is almost ready. I've been working hard on it. I'm hoping to share and post it next week. It will automatically be emailed to all of our donors, and then it will also be available on the website for anyone who's interested. Again, as a 501c3 nonprofit, we want to be really transparent with our information, with how finances are being collected and spent. We want to talk about the programs that we offered and share some stories from you, our community, on how it's impacted you, and just kind of a year in review of what's been happening so far. I am currently working on the 2025 Summit. I've hosted a couple of interviews and sessions already, and I'm really excited about what we're going to offer you. I don't have firm dates just yet, but it will be the week of January 20th. Most likely, it will be January 23rd through the 26th. That's a Thursday through a Sunday. I'm thinking about offering a little bit more time to watch the sessions and maybe a little bit more space in between sessions. That means less sessions per day, so you have time to watch them and process them. We want to have live community calls again throughout the summit to give you an opportunity to connect with me and with other people in the community, so you don't feel like you're just attending the summit alone on your computer or on your phone. We have a couple of live sessions planned, which is really exciting. We'll be catching up with Liana Chong, who is running the Spiritually Abusive Leadership and Climate Survey. She's going to give us a little report on what she's been learning and collecting and what we've been hearing from you, and a few other fun surprises as well. I imagine you might want to know who's speaking at this year's summit. And while I don't normally like to talk about it early, why don't we do it? This will be your first sneak peek. We have a few returning guests who I just love talking to and who I know you enjoy hearing from. We've got Janai Auman, I just recorded with today. We've got Dr. Janine McConaughey coming back. Heather Gargis, LPC and somatic trauma therapist, is coming back, and a few others as well. New this year that I'm really excited about. We have some new friends and some new faces. We've got Benjamin Kremer. He's pretty active on Instagram and a couple other places. He sends some great newsletters and emails. I've really appreciated his voice and the way that he shares things online, so we'll be talking with him. Kaylee Clark, who runs the Restory Center, was one of our breakout speakers at the conference this year. I really enjoyed speaking with her, and she'll be sharing a little bit more on pursuing forgiveness without abandoning justice. Really excited to be speaking with Pete Singer and Mike Sloan from Grace. We've got Dr. Kurt Thompson will be sharing with us. Adam Young will be sharing with us about story work. Christopher Stewart, also known, recently changed his handle to the Disabled Priest. Really excited for you to hear from him. And lots of others as well. So that's a little preview. As I'm recording these, I am hoping to release little clips here and there as teasers to give you an idea of what the sessions are coming about. Again, you probably won't hear much or see much about the summit until after the new year, but would love to just kind of put that in your head for now that we will be hosting it again in January, the week of the 20th, to coincide again with Spiritual Abuse Awareness Month, and just one of my favorite things, and I think biggest things that we do all year. Finally, a little podcast update. I can't believe it, but we've had 14,500 downloads in the last 6 months. To all of you who have been listening so faithfully and regularly, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has gone beyond my wildest expectations, and I hear from people fairly regularly, whether it's through Instagram or on the podcast. In the reviews, I get emails from you just saying how this is your favorite podcast. It's the one you listen to before anyone else, and I just don't know how to understand that. My brain doesn't comprehend it, but I'm so grateful that you're here. This may or may not be the last episode from me for this season. I may have a few fun extras to get through the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. I'm hoping to post some episodes from other podcasts that I've been a guest on. but I need the time to focus on the summit and just kind of doing that. I recognize my capacity, my finiteness, my limitedness, and just trying to draw a boundary for myself to be able to sustain the work that we're doing. I thought about posting some of the top episodes as replays, but I think it would be just as good to send you on a scavenger hunt to just listen to the originals. We've had lots of incredible conversations, but these are the top 5 according to you, our listeners. Episode 2 is Embracing Death and the Hope of Wholeness with Lori Wilbert. We talk about her latest book, The Understory, and just such a beautiful work. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Episode 15, Healing What's Within Through Curiosity and Connection with Chuck DeGroat, another recently released book, an excellent conversation. He offers some really great frameworks on recognizing when you are safe and what he calls home, or when you're lost in what he calls the sympathetic storm, or feeling shut down or lost in a dorsal fog, and how to recognize where you are, what to do when you find yourselves there, and how to move towards that healing. Not just the things that happen to you, but what you continue to carry with you, and to do it really compassionately, like we said, through curiosity and connection. Episode 7 on forced forgiveness, misinterpreting Matthew 18 with Dr. Scott McKnight. We break down that infamous passage of Matthew 18 of forgiving someone, and how it is not meant to be used in the context of any relationship with a power dynamic. That unless it is on a peer level, where you are on equal footing, Matthew 18 does not apply. Episode number 1, Navigating Toxic Systems and Maintaining Agency with Dr. Allison Cook. Just so grateful to Allison for being our first guest on the podcast, talking about her latest book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way. And then episode 10, A New Look at Fawning and Our Survival Strategies with Aundi Kolber. I can't say enough about the episode. I can't say enough about Aundi. Just her insight, her grace, her compassion, her wisdom, her friendship, and just the meaning I think that she has helped so many people with in the work that she provides and does. So if you haven't listened to those episodes yet, or if you're up for hearing again, you might forget what we talked about, I would love for you to check those out. Thanks again for being here. We are so grateful again for your listening over the past 6 months. Hard to believe that we've been recording and releasing these for 6 months now. Again, early statistics when I was researching podcasts say that most of them don't get past 3 episodes. And here we are at 27, and just so grateful again for you. Thank you for listening. You can find links and all the things in the show notes online. Please subscribe or follow to get new episodes automatically. If you enjoyed this episode, it really helps if you leave us a rating or a review, or to share with your friends. Again, we're hoping to raise that $10,000 by the end of the year. If our work has been meaningful to you, consider a one-time or monthly donation at brokentobeloved.org/Giving Tuesday. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope it's been helpful. Here's to moving toward healing and wholeness together. And I'll see you next time.